It is a fantasy gilet. I don't know if the camera picked that up, but I think I need a potato. Excuse me, can I have that back? Hey friend, I hope this finds you well. If you're new here, welcome to this little space. If you're back again, it's lovely to see you. I hope that you're having a nice day so far, whether it's the start or the afternoon. I have a cup of water with me today, which isn't that exciting, but I do really enjoy a nice bit of water. So, you know, cheers. I don't know if the camera picked that up, but I think I need a potato. Okay, that felt better. I will proceed to eat more potatoes as soon as I have finished today. Today's project is one that I first of all had, again, a lot of fun doing. I know that this is steering away from knitting, but it has fibre in it, it has fleece in it, and I learnt some skills, and I kind of think that this has set me on a path, not to do necessarily lots of this, but to learn and continue learning, because really, while knitting was the thing and finding connections, also this was always a place where I documented learning, and that's what I was doing. I was learning to knit, whereas now I can knit, and now I want to learn to do other things too. And I know that I keep saying this in different iterations, but it's really exciting, and it's quite nice to have had that little tiny realisation that this is a learning space. And yes, so I ended up watching Ring of Power when it came out, which I've thoroughly enjoyed and I have lots of thoughts on, but for pure entertainment value and for costumes and set decoration and craft, it's good. I mean, you know that how they spent a lot of money on it, and a lot, but they have paid craft people a fair wage, which is cool. We don't often get that. That aside, I really was eyeing up the outfits, and in particular Ellen Drill's quilted armour, for lack of a better description. I saw it and I just loved it, and I actually said it out loud to Alex, and nearly every film that we watch or TV series, I'm like, I bet they had fun making that. And I know that people in the industry are probably like, yeah, with the deadlines and the things that change and all of those things, and it must be really intense, but at the end of the day it's entertainment, so it should be taken with as light a heart as we can manage, you know, as long as it's not to the detriment of your health and all of those things. Wow, chatty cat. So I kept talking about this armour, and I don't know what it was about it, but heck, I just wanted to try it. So one evening I sat down with Alex to watch Fellowship of the Ring. Good choice, quite an apt choice. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try. I'm going to do a little swatch, for lack of a better phrase, and I'm just going to try and see what happens. And I did this little swatch. What I did was take a rectangle of fabric. I made another rectangle without closing up this top bit. I then stuffed it with some fibre, which was this. And this is from Fliss, who is wool shred, and she kind of gifted this to me as a way of saying, try some crafting. Hey! Oh! Look, you can come up here, but there's not much going on that you can like join us for. I used up the white fibre that she gifted me for this project, and I've still got some other darker one, and I'm thinking I still might try and spin some of this, but predominantly use it for felting and things, because there's quite a few bits that will just be a bit too short for spinning, so to turn into wool, if you don't know what spinning is, you literally spin it and turn it into fibre, yarn. So I put a little bit of that into this. I then used chalk to draw a grid on it, which hindsight should have done first, but I learnt that on my swatch, not on my project, which is good. And I played with these smaller geometric designs first, a square and this sort of bumblebee, and I really loved this, but I was that is going to take way longer than I should dedicate to a project that I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to achieve. So Alex helped me draw up this one, and this is the pattern I in fact went with, and I really liked it. It was speedy, it was easy to get fairly neat, and I think it looked the closest to the film, or this show, which does look like it's all hand done, and I'm sure it is. So I was quite content with the way it looked. I had actually basted this, so I did big long stitches to hold the fabric together so it didn't move, but I took them out so that I could see what the stitches actually look like. And yeah, I was quite surprised that this looked as nice as it did. And then I mentally drew a picture of what I imagined it to look like. Now that is an error in some ways, but I have actually achieved what I set out to do, which is wild. Here's what I had in my head. I imagined it would have a stand-up collar that was quite sturdy, a wide neck so that the front meant I could wear my chainmail and have it on show. Nerdy. And then it would come across this side or that side, I wasn't sure. It didn't really matter to me which way, but it would come across and then close down and have a nice sort of scalloped edging, for lack of a better phrase, and then come over the hips a little bit. And I didn't think too much about colour ahead of time. I had this cotton, black cotton, in my fabric pantry, or suitcase, because it just lives in a suitcase, and I thought that would make a really good lining. So I thought, well, I've got part of it, why don't I be sensible and try a mock-up first, just see if I can get the right shape, having no pattern and not having draped or like patterned anything, a garment, since I was maybe 16 or 17 years old. And I did, and I'm quite happy with them, and I've just noticed a pin in one of them, and I've been wearing this, so that's fun. This was the first one that I did. The shoulders weren't right, but were getting there, as were the underarms. I really actually liked this collar, so this is very similar to what I ended up going with. This front bit all needed reworking. I used a jacket that I already have to draw around on this sort of paper. This is paper that I got when I was baking, and I use it for everything. This piece in particular has been drawn on and used, and will probably go into some paper mache. So I used that to get a rough idea to get this shape. And I was like, okay, we're moving towards it. So I then made a second one. This one I didn't put the collar on because I was quite happy with where I was at. It needed to be longer on this side, but I got it to the point of the shape that I was after, which I was quite happy with. And the underarm, while not perfect because of my sewing technique more than anything, the shoulders and the underarm were looking much better for my personal preference. I started to get this sort of curve shape done, which was also good. Look, I could just do that. So I ended up drawing this out onto paper with notes and any adjustments that I kind of wanted to remember that I needed to do. It was actually as long as the paper, so I was just going to add this on to the piece when I get to it by hand. I also felt like I'd be able to make it look a bit more organic and refined if I actually did it on the thing rather than on paper, which really isn't that logical. This was my back piece, and I noted on where the seams are, where I'm just going to cut on the fold. Cutting on the fold doesn't happen with dense quilted fabric, which I didn't need to learn the hard way for, I just knew that that would be the case, but just a heads up. I didn't need a seam allowance here because in my little sketch, I thought it would be fun to have whatever colour the quilting string, thread, sewing terms, I don't know them anymore, would be the same as a bias tape round the edge to really make it pop a bit or be cohesive. I knew that I didn't need to finish these edges as such with an extra seam or a fold, so I just left them the width they needed to actually be. Having been kind of convinced I could do the shape and do the technique, I took my lining fabric, not that exciting, to the charity shops of Watford. I didn't actually find anything that was suitable. I looked for curtains, I looked for blankets, quilts, like pre-existing quilts, but nothing. And even larger items, but there was nothing that was right. I did pick up a £1 aged velvet curtain, which I'm going to use in the future, which is cool, and some scraps of fabric that I used to make myself a little underbust corset. And I also purchased someone a Eric Clapton CD because there was a £1 limit on cards and they had only spent £1. So that was nice because she gave me a hug and was very, very grateful. That was a nice little thing that happened. And then because I couldn't find any there, I did go to my local fabric shop, who are getting a shop on the high street, which is really cool because are we technically a market town? I think we're a fair trade town. But we had a market for like 150 years in this big indoor building, and it was a bit gross, to be honest, but it was always busy. There was so many stallholders and all useful, like there was hardware, there was fabric, there was a fishmonger, greengrocers, like just anything and everything. Someone that dealt with luggage. That all got moved into, tucked away basically in like a car park, hidden off the back of town, that doesn't get any foot traffic, and it's a wind trap. It's really cold. It's just a real shame. It's a shame. So it was very nice to go there and to hear the good news that they're getting a shop, but also the woman that owned the fabric shop in the original market was covering and looking after his shop while he opened the shop on the high street, which I thought was really nice to see that they were like supporting each other. And so I had a good chat with her about that. And we ended up going for canvas. It's nice and sturdy. I think I got about 1 metre of it. It is robust. It frays quite a lot because it's woven. It's like in the fairly loosely but dense. Loosely but dense, if that makes sense. Part of me really wanted to do like a forest green or a deep burgundy or a moody teal or something. But they just didn't have anything. I'm happy with these choices, but I think in the future I won't go for as high contrast. I could have gone for black bias and black thread, but I ended up going for this sort of silver grey colour. It goes with the black, it contrasted nicely. I wear quite a bit of silver if I wear jewellery, I tend to veer towards silver. I thought it'd go with a lot more than anything more whimsical, which I would really like to do. I would really like to do more of this. I really like this technique and I think I've learned a lot from this project, but we'll go back to that later. These were my final choices. I already had a thread for my machine that was similar to this colour. This looks a mess because I did try and put this on a bobbin by accident. I thought I had the other thread, but I was just tired and didn't pay attention. Oops. Armed with the supplies that I needed, I then waited until I had a nice bit of time in an evening. I used some chalk and drew grids on some fabric. I made a little rectangle and basted it together with some more fluff in between. And this I did dense. I felt like it was going to work, having done a patch this big. I learnt some things from it. I learnt that the fabric will shrink. Makes sense, you're pulling things together. The basting didn't need to be as tight as I originally did. I could do 2-inch, if not 3-inch, and be fine, because it wasn't really holding like a sheet of anything, it was holding bits in. I was very happy with it, and I thought, well, it's time to just get going. I took out my fabric that was washed and ironed, and then I put on my big pattern pieces. I didn't do the collar, and made sure that I added width and length in both directions. Not too much, but enough that if it shrunk or it moved, I didn't have to worry about it suddenly being too small and then panicking. Once I had those cut out, so I did a front right, front left, and a back piece, big enough. Once they were cut, I ended up doing the chalk grids across the whole of it, all in one go. I think I did it in an evening where Alex was at band practice, which was a good time to do it because I had full focus and I kind of didn't feel like I was wasting my day. It is a fantasy gilet. Alex, which was good. Bonus. And once that had been, they'd all been chalk lined out, I then stuffed them and basted them all, which did take quite a while, to be honest. But again, I feel like I could have done it without the basting, but it would have given a much less refined look. Not that this is a refined item as such. It is a fantasy gilet. That is literally what I've made. And then I just got sewing. So hand stitching each piece until it was completely covered. I both did it at home in the car. It was actually quite nice to do in the car. I didn't think it would be as safe as it was, but it was. Nothing more apt than your husband sending you Lord of the Ring memes when you're filming this, and then saying someone at his work is going away for a few weeks and he might have to light the beacon and call Gondor for aid when you're filming a video about Ring of Power style clothing. Yeah, where was I? I was talking about what I was doing, wasn't I? Can you remember? Ah, yes. So once I had all the pieces done, I ended up laying my pattern pieces on top and pinning them into the fabric, and then using chalk to mark out the lines to cut and the lines for the additional seam allowances, which I did luckily write down on my pattern pieces, and in my notebook I wrote down a little key of what to sew and then what was going to be a seam. So I ended up wanting to sew around my chalk lines on most of the edges, not all of them, so that all of the fibre was stuck and not going anywhere, and to see if I could catch as many of these threads as possible. I think a few come off in the final piece, but I'm not upset about that and I can fix them if I want to. And that worked really well. For the ones with seam allowance, I went in and I pulled out the excess fibre so the seams could be finer and hopefully more refined, which did again seem to work quite well. Once I had done that, I made my collar, which took almost no time at all. I used a bit more of this canvas fabric and a bit of interfacing. I cut out this I did cut on the fold, so I cut out 2 of these in my canvas and 2 on my interfacing. Ironed the interfacing on, sewed it, turned it inside out. all of the sewing that I needed to do on the machine to join it together. I could have done it in a different way so that the collar sat inside the lining and the outer fabric, which might have, in hindsight, been a good idea because I could have put bias on the outer fabric and it could have matched. But I'm happy with the way it's turned out. I don't know what I quite did, but I ended up having to cover quite a few of the inner seams because some of the red that I used for my first piece of lining. So I did actually use a red lining for all of the pieces and then put the black lining on top so you can't see this chaos. Excuse me, can I have that back? Once I was quite happy with the shoulders, I tried it on to just check that it worked and it was sitting right. I did the underarms, they were sewn up, and then it was just a case of using my bias and going around all of the edges that I needed to. And I must say, I got a lot better with this as I went. Should have done some practices, should have done more practice. You live and you learn. And I'm still pleased with this as a first sewing project of this capacity in a long, long time. I ended up hand stitching it on where I wanted it. Just a running stitch, nothing too tight. And then braved using the sewing machine, and I found that I could, by the end of it, sew so much closer to the edge than I was willing to do. And it would have looked neater. So I did learn. Sewing it up and putting the bias actually only took a day of work, really, which is wild. And we did that on a bank holiday while we did all of these other lovely fun things, which was really good. We did productive things. We went to the dump twice to drop off things that we should have taken years ago. It felt really nice. And I say the dump, it's the recycling centre, but Stig of the Dump stayed with me for years. Anyway, it was then a case of deciding how I wanted it to fasten, and I'm really pleased with the outcome. It really made it go from just like almost like a horse riding item to fantasy. I thought about using just hook and eye so you couldn't see any and it was sort of invisible. Oh, Drew's getting in my bag. What's she doing? And then I thought about buying some fancy embroidered rope type thing, but I like to use what I have, and what I have is chain and eyelets. And so I put one eyelet on one side and one on another and put a chain between the two. And I really liked how it looked, but Alex was like, that chain needs to be looser. And I said, well, that won't function the way I need it to. It's like, what if I put an extra chain that hangs down? He's like, yes. So with a little bit of finicking, a few whacks of a hammer to get the eyelets in, it was done. I had a little bit of hand stitching to just touch things up. I've done my best, but it does need a little bit of adjusting still, not too much. I'm gonna stop talking about it. I think we're gonna go to a field. should have put these culottes on for the videos that I just took because these are way more reminiscent of what he's actually wearing in the show, but you live and you learn. There's a few things that I would change. I would love to be able to do this bias as neat as I know I can. The hook and eye needs adjusting. I think I've put this on at the wrong angle for it to hook while it's on. It was right, but when I did sew it, I ended up sewing it to look straight rather than to connect. So that's something that I will change. That would be a 5-minute job. I had to do a little patch on one of these shoulders, this one, because the seam wasn't quite strong enough. Again, I don't think that's that noticeable. That's a, hey, I made a thing, look at what I did wrong kind of thing. But I'm really happy with it. It is clearly structured. So at the moment, I've got it so it flares just a little. Whereas I could add it here so it sits straight. This is how it would sit. But other than that, like, I'm really pleased. This I love. I think it was a real touch. I'm dead chuffed. I didn't expect this to be as cool. I'm glad that I went out and tried it before telling you how I felt about it, because I do think the bit at the front will make all the difference in the way it fits, and it won't move up and down as much. So I'm going to do that. And yeah, I've really had a lot of fun doing this. I know it's different for a lot of you, but if you found your way here and you're enjoying it, I'm so glad. And if you have any tips, I'm up for learning. Yeah, I am super pleased. I'm going to style this some more ways this week because I don't know, I just can't believe I can add this much whimsy to my wardrobe and it actually be practical, because it was blooming cold out there. Our heating actually kicked on, and it only kicks on if it gets below 12 degrees in the house. So, and I was out there without a top on, like a mad woman. And I wasn't warm in the arms, but my body and my core temperature stayed fine, which will do. A 10 out of 10 recommend. If you decide to take on a project like this, I would love to see. And yeah. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a lovely week, whatever you get up to. I will be uploading a normal knitting video, I think, next week. And there's loads of lovely nature footage that I can't wait to share. We finally got to go out. We went to Thursley Common and we went to the nature reserve. We found quite a few lovely critters, including some deer, to photograph, and a hare. We saw a huge hare, which was really cool. Yeah. So that will be happening next week. In the meantime, I hope you look after yourselves. Give everyone you love a big squeeze if you can, and don't forget to love each other.